All right, we are rolling on. We're back with another episode, episode 4. And I'm sure you're like, hey, is this where we get to get out and onto the field? I'm ready, coach. Put me in. Put me in, coach. Easy, Tiger. Easy, Tiger. We're not quite there yet. The last two episodes have been about self care, conditioning, visioning, making our list, and roster building. And we've set a decent foundation. And in this episode, we'll continue building on that. Episode 3 is all about learning your attachment style, healing from any trauma in this area of your relationship behaviors, and also how to choose a partner that chooses you. We're going to talk about choosing partners. Essentially, we're now in the drafting season of our women's playbook to dating. Draft season. All right. In professional football, drafting season is both exciting as hell and nerve wracking all at the same time. There are more players than teams, more aspiring professional football players than there are slots open to fill them. And let's face it, everyone will not make it through draft season with a successful outcome that they've only dreamed about. For hundreds of men who fought their way from pee wee leagues in middle school all the way through college, this is their championship moment. And for every 10 whose dreams are made, there are hundreds who have to turn to plan B or plan C and take another route for their professional dreams. Such as it is with dating. We've all heard the saying, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Well, some of those guppies we won't swim a lap with if you paid us to, right? So I want to look at the strategy behind draft season and highlight how this aligns for us in the dating world. And to do this, I want to dig down into how we attach ourselves to partners and in relationships. This aligns with how men may show up as members on a team. And then I want to drill down into how we choose our players. And this process is drafting. All right, let's get started with attachment styles. Now, maybe you've heard of the 4 different type of attachment styles. Surely you've heard of the term clinger, right? Stage 10 clinger. Well, in academic or psychology terms, that is someone with an anxious style of attachment. Or what about someone who tends to run away from any type of commitment? These would be considered avoidant. But let's go ahead and start at the top with what attachment styles are. Now, your attachment style is usually established through the bond you had with your primary caregivers. That's when you started learning how to express your needs, how to assess your safety, and how to respond to other people's emotions and behaviors. Attachment style theory was founded by psychoanalyst John Bowlby in the 1950s and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth. Now, in everyday terms, attachment theory outlines how your bond with your primary caregivers sets that foundation for how you navigate relationships throughout life. The theory states that the primary goal of a human infant is to maintain proximity to its caregiver, which was necessary for survival during our evolution. Now, this is explained by a psychologist, Krista Jordan. Bowlby believed that because of this evolution, infants and toddlers were monitoring their parents to see what strategies would allow them to stay close. Bowlby believed that there are 4 different distinguishing characteristics of attachment. First is proximity maintenance. Now, this is the desire to be near the people we are attached to. Next is safe haven. This is where the infant returns to the attachment figure for comfort and safety in the fear of face or a threat. Then there's secure base. This would be the attachment figure who acts as a base of security from which the child can explore the surrounding environment. And then the last characteristic is separation distress. This is the level of anxiety that occurs in the absence of the attachment figure. I do want to drill down into the psychology terms because a lot of this stuff, a lot of relationship things are really rooted in psychology. And a lot of this work can also help us to guide us learning about ourselves and then how we show up in relationships. So stick with me here. Now that we know the characteristics of attachment, let's jump into the 4 type of attachment styles. Now, these styles include secure, avoidant, which is also known as dismissive or anxious avoidant in children. Then there's anxious, which is known as preoccupied or anxious ambivalent in children. And then last is disorganized, which can show up as fearful avoidant. Now, as I go through the various attachment styles, I want you to pay attention to anything that may resonate with you. And while you're doing this, give yourself graces. You have to promise me that. I don't want you getting scared off talking about, oh my God, I'm just screwed up. No, I want you to just learn about yourself. This is what this is all about. And here's why. We unconsciously expect our romantic partners to act as our parents did. And therefore, we act in certain ways due to these expectations. Now, this is according to researchers on this topic. And these tendencies play out whether we realize it or not. According to a 2018 study, women score higher on anxiety and men score higher on avoidance when it comes to relationships. But these gender differences are small and have no direct impact on a person's attachment style. And regardless of your primary relationships, don't worry, you can change your attachment styles. The most important takeaway is realizing that someone can change from an insecure attachment style and develop healthy and secure bonds in future relationships. And this is from a relationship counselor that said this. So let's dig down a little bit further into what these attachment styles look like. First, let's explore secure attachment. Secure attachment is the result of feeling secure with your caregivers from childhood and being able to ask for reassurance or validation without punishment. Ultimately, you felt safe. You felt understood, comforted, and valued during your early interactions. Your caregivers were probably emotionally available and aware of their own emotions and behaviors. Therefore, children then model that secure attachment as well as receiving it from their caregivers. Now, here are signs that you may be someone with a secure attachment style. You're able to regulate your emotions. You are easily trusting of others. You have effective communication skills. You have the ability to seek emotional support. You're comfortable being alone. You're comfortable in close relationships. You have the ability to self-reflect in partnerships. You can easily connect with people. You have the ability to manage conflict well, high self-esteem, and then last, you're able to be emotionally available. So you may be wondering, how does this manifest in relationships? What does that look like? What does it feel like? Well, securely attached people grow up feeling secure emotionally and physically and can engage in the world with others in healthy ways. And as a result, people with secure attachment styles tend to navigate relationships well. They generally have positive, trusting, and loving relationships with their partners. They trust their partner's intentions, and jealousy is often not an issue for them. And securely attached people feel that they're worthy of love and they don't need external reassurance. All right, so that is the secure attachment. Let's move on to the next style of attachment and take a look at the avoidant style. Now, avoidant, again, which is also termed as dismissive avoidant or anxious avoidant, are all words for the same insecure attachment style. This is defined by failures to build long-term relationship with others due to an inability to engage in physical and emotional intimacy. So in childhood, someone who has this attachment style may have had strict or emotional distant or maybe sometimes even absent caregivers. People with this attachment style, their caregivers may have left them alone to fend for themselves for a long time. They expected that child to be independent. They reprimanded the child for depending on them. These people may have been rejected when expressing their needs or emotions. And then last, the caregivers may have been slow to respond to basic needs. Some avoidant producing parents are outright neglectful, but others, let's be just easy on them, they were simply busy, slightly disinterested, or more concerned with things like grade, chores, manners, feelings, dreams, fears, all of the parenting things that come into the mix. And so as a result, researchers say that these children may have learned to adopt a strong sense of independence so they did not have to rely on anyone else for self care or for support. So that's that particular style. So let's move on to the next style, which is the avoidant attachment. Anxious avoidant attachment adults may tend to navigate relationships at an arm's length. This is what researchers say. The need for emotional intimacy is simply lacking in this type of individual. So romantic relationships are not able to reach any level of depth. And while they allow romantic partners to engage with them, they tend to avoid getting emotionally close. A partner may feel as if they can just never get inside and will inevitably be stonewalled or dismissed when a relationship feels too serious for the anxious avoidant partner. Now, you may be wondering, how can I tell if this is me? So, you might have an anxious avoidant attachment style if you persistently avoid emotional or physical intimacy, if you feel a strong sense of self independence, if you are uncomfortable expressing your feelings, if you are often dismissive of others, if you have a hard time trusting people, if you feel threatened by anyone who tries to get close to you, if you would rather spend more time alone than interacting with others because you simply believe you don't need others in your life. And I'm putting air quotes in the air right now if you can say that you have commitment issues. The next style is anxious. Anxious attachment style, which is also known as anxious ambivalent or anxious preoccupied. Again, these are insecure attachment styles. So if you have an attachment style that is anxious, you may have a fear of rejection, a fear of abandonment, and depending on a partner for validation and emotional regulation is your go to. And you may have some codependent tendency. Now, how does this start? How does someone just end up with an anxious attachment style? Now, this attachment style tends from inconsistent parenting that is not attuned to a child's needs. Now, these children have difficulty understanding their caregivers and have no security for what to expect moving forward from them. They're often confused with their parental relationships and may feel unstable. Now, children with this attachment style experience very high distress when their caregivers left them. Sometimes the parents would be supportive and responsive to the child's needs, while other times they would not be attuned to their children. Indications of someone with an anxious attachment style goes back to parents who may have alternated between being overly coddling or and then detached or indifferent. Maybe the parents were easily overwhelmed, sometimes attentive, and then they pushed them away. And then sometimes parents that parented anxiously, they made the child feel responsible for how they felt as parents. Therefore, as a child, these children grew up thinking that they were supposed to take care of other people's feelings, and then they often become codependent. And a lot of times that means they grow up being people pleasers. Now, here's a sign that you may have an anxious attachment style: clinging tendencies, highly sensitive to criticism, whether that's real or perceived, needing approval from others, jealous tendencies, difficulty being alone, low self esteem, feeling unworthy of love, intense fear of rejection, significant fear of abandonment, and difficulty trusting others. Now, how does this show up in relationships? According to researchers, people with anxious attachment styles usually feel unworthy of love and need constant reassurance from their partners. They often blame themselves for challenges in the relationships and can exhibit frequent and intense jealousy or distrust due to poor self esteem. And ultimately, there's a deep rooted fear of being abandoned, rejected, or alone. And those type of fears typically express themselves in these ways. All right, that was a lot. We are going to move into our last attachment style, which is disorganized. Now, anxious disorganized attachment is defined as having extremely inconsistent behavior and difficulty trusting others. And the most common cause of a disorganized attachment style is childhood trauma, neglect, or abuse. Now, this could also mean fear of their parents, their safety, and who's around them. And children with this attachment style, they may have seemed confused as they were coming up or growing up. And caregivers, for them, they were usually inconsistent and were often seen as sources of comfort and also fear by their children, which ultimately led to their disorganized behaviors. Signs that someone has a disorganized attachment style includes fear of rejection, inability to regulate emotions, contradictory behaviors, high levels of anxiety, distrusting of others, and then signs of both avoidant and attachment styles, what we just talked about. And researchers have indicated that this type of attachment style is also associated with mental health conditions in adulthood, including mood disorders, personality disorders, self harm, and substance use disorder. All right, so how does this style manifest in relationships? Well, in relationships, people with disorganized attachment styles tend to have unpredictable and confusing behavior. Researchers say that they alternate between being aloof and independent and then being clingy and emotional. So it's, again, disorganized. And while they desperately seek love, they also push partners away because of the fear of love. They believe that they'll always be rejected, but they don't avoid emotional intimacy. They fear it and then they constantly seek it out only to reject it again. It's just a vicious cycle. They perceive their partners as unpredictable and they themselves behave in unpredictable ways within their relationships as they continue to go between the need for security and fear. And bringing it all home, although these first experiences may affect your adult life, there's also the possibility of making changes that may help you improve how others relate to you and you relate to others. And this includes your romantic partners. Guys, we are at the halfway point, the 50-yard line with all of this. I want you to hang in there with me. It's a lot. But to sum it up with all of these various styles, let's consider this. Securely attached adults tend to believe that romantic love is enduring. Ambivalently attached adults report falling in love often, while those with avoidant attachment styles describe love as rare and temporary. And while we can't say that early attachment styles are identical to adult romantic attachment, the research has shown that early attachment styles can help predict patterns of behavior in adulthood. All right, you may be wondering, well, damn, girl, am I just stuck with the crappy hand I was given early in life if I'm not secure? Am I just doomed to be that way forever in relationships? Well, just like conditioning, just like with working out and practicing that all the football players do once they're on their teams to constantly get better, girl, you can get better too. You can get better. If you believe that you have an insecure attachment style, there is still hope for you yet. Now, in some cases, this happens naturally. For instance, if you're one with an anxious attachment style, engaging in a relationship with someone with a secure style can help you become more secure in turn. Now, aging may also play a factor. One study suggests that anxious attachment styles can become more secure over time simply because the older we get, the less time we have for relationships that don't meet our needs or make us happy. Remember that list I told you to make in episode 2? Now, going back over the lessons or patterns in your relationships can help stretch you to grow you beyond your learned attachment style. Now, creating a sense of self-awareness on your attachment style will help you gain a clear starting point on your journey to a secure style. Now, with all of this work and this advice right here, especially because we're talking about some things that really dig down with mental health, I want to put this out there that I am an advocate for mental health professionals and getting the therapy that you need. So don't feel like you need to go through this alone. If you feel that, yes, I had childhood trauma that I just can't undo by myself. If I could have undone it by now, I would have done it, girl. Therapy. I will recommend therapy. It's not something to be stigmatized. And with all of this work, you can work it out with a therapist. So I would also put that in your toolbox. Now that we've done our part to know how we as women show up in relationships, and this is just like how football players learn the roles they play as teammates on any team they're on, we can advance to the next step, and we are officially in draft season. When it comes to drafting season, you, my dear, are the team, and your suitors or potential partners or partner are the players waiting to be selected by you. Yes, you, honey, you get to choose. You are the owner, general manager, the head coach, all wrapped up into one. You are calling the shots. Remember that. So many times, we as women, we are waiting on the sidelines to be chosen. No, 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 ma'am. You have a say in all of this too. Stop just worrying about if he or she or they like you. Baby girl, do you even like them? Have you considered that? So, what does drafting season look like in professional football? Well, it all starts with the NFL Scouting Combine. The National Invitational Camp, called NIC, is the Super Bowl of the player development process. And this is again known as the NFL Scouting Combine. This 4-day invitation only event allows NFL scouts to evaluate that year's top draft eligible college players on a various of things like medical, mental, and physical criteria. Now, only 300 or so players attend each year. The combine takes place at the Lucas Oil Stadium, home of the Indianapolis Colts. The event has been held in Indianapolis every year since 1987, with one exception in 2021. And as you can guess, it was canceled due to the pandemic. But every year it's held in Indianapolis. Players that qualify for the combine will run through a series of challenges that are broken up into three aspects that include physical, medical, and professional. Athletes go through different positional drills along with 6 primary combine drills. This includes the 40-yard dash, bench press, shuttle run, vertical jump, and the broad jump. Scouts gather all of this data on the players based on their field work, along with additional measures that they collect during the time of the 4-day period. They're evaluating them for their weight, their wingspan, their hand size. These are just like a lot of things that they're looking at over the course of the 4 days. Now, in 2013, the NFL introduced a player assessment test. This test was designed to measure attributes of players outside of their physical capabilities. This new test measured learning styles, motivation, decision-making skills, response to pressure, and unexpected stimuli in core intellect. The assessment tool is intended to be a supplement to the existing measurements that the NFL does during the combine. It's not a replacement for any of the other tests that they do. It's simply another way that they can understand the behavior makeup of the individuals, of the players that are looking to be on the teams, and how they would perform on the field, and also how they would deal off the field. Coaches and general managers use the assessment tool to determine the likelihood that the prospect will fit into the team system that they currently have in place. So this test aims to give the football clubs a better understanding of an individual's behavior makeup and also the coachability. And it will help define if a personality fits into the team chemistry and the direction that the franchise is pursuing. Now, bringing this all back to our women's playbook for dating, you are in the position of evaluating and choosing players or potential partners that best align with the roster, remember that list, that you previously constructed. You get to assess their behavior makeup. How do they show up in relationships? How will they complement your life? And their coachability. Because let's be honest, not every player shows up on the football field moving and making every play perfectly. And neither do our partners when we first start a relationship with them. So you need to always be assessing how coachable your potential partners are. How do they adjust to your needs? They may check off 90% of the boxes for an ideal mate, but how likely are they to be flexible in adjusting to the 10% that is not there? Now, in addition to assessing the player, you must also consider what you bring to the relationship. Let's be frank here. If you don't understand, appreciate, and love yourself, first to be able to show up in your full glory of what you're asking from a romantic partner, sis, you are being unrealistic. In choosing our partners, we need to be able to evaluate our own selves and what we can offer them. This is the same with football teams. Yes, they're evaluating and offering a spot on their team to a select few hungry players. But as a team, they have to come correct too. They can't lowball a player with some BS salary or deal. They have to sell themselves and outline the benefits of joining their team. So you have to do the same, my friends. In a report from Psychology Today, there are two ways that we choose partners, either from a needs based perspective or from a secure based perspective. And if this sounds familiar, it's because it's often aligned with our attachment styles. And when you're choosing from a needs based perspective, this looks like because she loves me. So when you're choosing from a needs based perspective, it looks like because he or she loves me, because they're a great provider, because they take care of my needs. If you choose someone, you should consider what you can give and add to the other person's life. On the other side of this coin is the secure based perspective. This looks like because they're a beautiful person, because I want to give myself to them, because I want to love and cherish them. This type of choosing is based in love as something to be given rather than a need to be met. And this type of self this type of self-actualized secure-based choosing is a value-added proposition, whereas needs-based choosing takes away from the other person and comes out of a sense of lack or belief of scarcity. Now, some nuggets of wisdom from psychologists say choose someone you can value and cherish. Going back to nuggets of wisdom from psychologists, they say that you should choose someone. Going back to research based info, now bringing in some nuggets of wisdom from researchers and psychologists, they say choose someone you can value and cherish and whose life you want to add value to. Basically, don't sit and wait and hope that the right person will come to you. Here are some things that you can do. Nurture those aspects of yourself you can give freely. Get some of your needs met from other people other than your romantic partner. You can't depend on one person to be your all. Try to give the other person those things that get in the practice of giving the other person the things that you yourself would most like to receive. And when you get to that point where you have that partner, tell them, I choose you. And then tell them how you want to enrich their lives. Whew, okay, woo child. We have covered so much in this episode, and I can certainly keep going, but we are going to have to take this goodiness into episode 4. Also, you may have to listen to this episode a few times because it is loaded with a lot of jewels. You may have to listen and take down some notes and go back and replay. And don't forget to share a woman's playbook to dating with your sister friends. You can share with your girlfriends, your coworkers, your cousins, whoever you feel can benefit from this playbook for dating. As always, I so appreciate you listening, and go ahead and stay tuned for episode 4 next week. Remember, I'm rooting for you. We're all one team. You got this, girl.